Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I? Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I? Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I? Sweet dreams are made of this. Sweet dreams. chances. Everybody's looking for something.
And good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet. Celebrating another day of beautiful life and breath as we wander through this, well, disturbance pattern. And I also was taking notes earlier. If I may read from a pre-prepared note, COVID was a forced collapse. This is a controlled collapse of the remnants. That's kind of where we sit. If you haven't noticed, there's so many things going on. The distractions are overlapping to the point of I'm just going to stop looking at it for a while and come back after. There's a major something on right at the cusp. There's too many overlapping scatter wave pattern stories that are the genre, from the economy to the politics to the society to the movie stars to the sports betting. The scandals are everywhere. I mean, as far as you look, there's like a major, gigantic, unbelievable, like story of the year story all simultaneously happen across all genres of all news simultaneously right now. So what is coming is the question. So Ransom, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Ransom Godwin in the house with me here. And if I may kick off this episode of the Civilization Cycle podcast over on buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. Homestead Nurse getting us 3 double espressos. Bella 65 double espresso. Someone bought us 5 double espressos. Allison Bavage. Keep up the good work. Great show, guys. Love to hear more about the food stamps. Interested. Is it Walmart shutting the doors? No, they're hiring extra security. Almost every video I'm seeing extra securities everywhere now. So, take it for what it's worth. And I do have a little bit of update on the EBT, if I may, Ransom. Just throw the idea here. EBT has been given out. It was only a percentage of what was promised. They had to rework the numbers by the state. Those that received the monies, there's a lot of stories going around. They saw it in their card, but then they waited a day or two and they went back and it was zero balance. So it appears that, I'm just saying, first, just seems like the first 24 to 48 hours, you have to use those funds immediately when they're in there. If you don't use them, then they're gone. And that's very much the way they can do with digital currency. It's almost like a dry run for central bank digital currencies. Like, say, imagine if you're waiting for the EBT cards to get funded and then suddenly, it's there, but you only got 24 hours, 48 hours to spend it, or else it's gone. Imagine if that was your paycheck every month. Like, you had to spend your entire paycheck in the first 3 days or the first week, or you lose it all. Or if it goes in and gets negative interest rates and you're losing 5% per day if you don't spend it. That's programmable money. That's the future they want to take us to. So, Ransom, I'll start off the show. What do you think? Do you think this dry run for CBDCs and kind of the capture of emotions by not spending fast enough?
Well, yeah, they could obviously do a dry run on anything. Besides, they've done it before. It wouldn't be actually the first time. This would be the first nationwide, kind of beta run to see what people are going to do. And I've been seeing a lot of videos, but I also went to Walmart the other day, and it was
Mellow.
boring in there. There was nobody doing nothing. They weren't. I mean, I do live in a relatively small city, but I haven't seen nothing on the news unless they are filtering the news, because that's very possible. I know that they do that in this state. As a matter of fact, there's a scandal about it now. They just been not only do they filter the news, the law enforcement has been filtering the crimes. So, I thought back about
crime.
this.
That's a great T-shirt. Filter the crime.
Right, filter it out. I was thinking a lot about last week and how we talked about these flock cameras and how they just popped up everywhere in a lot of rural areas now. And I went around driving and looking at them and stuff, and some of them are put in places I can understand, and then others are in weird spots that are really just there to catch the amount of people going through a specific intersection. And it has nothing to do with the I thought I went to go look at the physical locations, because on the map it looked like they were right at the grocery stores and stuff, so they're offset a little bit. But I found out that there was this program in Albuquerque in which the flock and the government got together and the law enforcement, and they offered local businesses to join their network of cameras and stuff. So, and then I was thinking, it's really weird that they let crime go rampant for a couple of years, and then they offer this program to help tamp down the crime if you'll just hand over all of your feeds of your personal surveillance and your homes and your businesses, and then the police have a direct link, basically, where I want to know what's going on over at Zales Jewelry, and they go bink and they can see who's going in there. So on the back side of that, if you get people used to allowing their feeds to be given to the government, they can add filters of facial recognition and all of these things. And matter of fact, you and I shared a couple videos that were directly related to them abusing the system already, and it just got started, and falsely accusing some people because they seen their vehicle or whatever. So it is a little bit scary that they're doing that, but when you look at the overall net that they're creating with the financials and the food dependency and the digital IDs and the camera systems everywhere intertwined, along with, we've got, I've shown you things that are out there, but are probably out there being installed right now. And that's like the Wi-Fi surveillance, the, 5G and going to 6G towers that everybody were worried about doing this or that. But one thing that no one's arguing about is that they are a major component of the track and trace system worldwide. It's going up everywhere. But I did think it was convenient that in certain city areas with a high crime rate that they just let the crime go. They didn't respond to trespassing. Like in Albuquerque, they would have homeless people encamped out literally in the door stoop of their place, pooping and peeing and doing
That was
drugs.
everywhere. That was every
And
city.
yeah, and when they called, well, you can't do nothing about it. The sidewalk's public, or people were trying to do stuff on their own, and then they were getting charged with crimes themselves for trying to run an establishment or a business without basically people loitering and camping, literally at their stoop of their door, and then harassing everyone for change. And then then all the businesses are going to fold over to this idea that they normally wouldn't about 5 years ago, which is, yeah, I'll just go ahead and volunteer my CCT cameras in here and my Wi-Fi surveillance, the wireless camera. So they're getting a massive upgrade. It's something very dystopic, like maybe if you've ever seen that movie GoldenEye, where their supercomputer that the government holds started tapping everything, including sciences that people kind of aren't aware of. Like you can watch a video that has no audio and get the transcript of what the people are saying on there based on vibrations around them. So there's some really high-tech surveillance that just people don't have a clue that that's already being built and established. And then on
Hey,
the
wait,
other
can I
end,
throw one at you?
yeah,
You
go
and I
for it.
both know Lee Wheelbarger.
Yeah.
He was the one who invented that laser technology that from like 2 miles away with a laser, you could touch on a window on a building and listen to the conversation in between. That's why there's triple pane glass now that we put in all of our facilities, military and especially embassies, so they can't use that same laser technology. But you got to realize, how many years ago was that? 20?
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
even more. That they were using lasers to actually touch the glass and get the vibrations of somebody speaking in a room off a single window. That isn't, you
yeah.
take it that far, and we were that's 20, 25 years ago. And especially, like you mentioned, 5 years ago, it was unthinkable that you'd use cameras or allow anybody to tap into those. 15 years ago was truly unthinkable that you let people poop on the steps, poop on the street, like ask people for change, drive business. That was truly unthinkable. Like if you were to just drop back in a time machine 15 years, which most of us can remember that, like that was an unacceptable way of life, period.
Yeah. But now it's
How did they
accepted.
normalize it quickly? And I'll think about that with the speeding up of, digital currency and compliance and everything.
Well, it's weird, that laser's just one of many technologies that do the same thing. About probably 10 years ago, I watched a video where they had an algorithm that would use people's earbuds, like that you use for phones and music players, MP3 players, and the disc on there, the little diaphragm on the speaker, could pick up everything within 100-meter circumference of vibration. So everything going on, all the conversations. It's just who has these, and how do they want to use them? It's obviously not. At the same time as it being person by person, it's also not really. It's more of a wide sweeping data recovery thing that they use for that. So as we go in the future, things are going to be difficult to maintain a lifestyle like we're used to right now. So at some point, something has to happen that makes people accept the transfer, and not only their behavior, but their lifestyle, their freedoms, their privacy, all of that. There has to be a singularity in the public worldwide. Maybe each country might have a different trigger, but it's going to amount to the same thing. So whether they're far left communist or far right capitalist, they're all going to the same road. The technology is what's happening. It's something that I think is happening so fast humans don't know how to deal with it, except for the controllers think they do.
Yeah, and I'll add something in there. As this progresses incredibly fast, everybody is going to be demanding a safety net. Like a few years ago, it was unthinkable that there'd be universal basic income in all the societies, and that's the way that people would survive. And you were thinking that is absolutely impossible. 10 years ago, if I were to say UBI is going to be there because AI is going to take everybody's job in as little as 10 years, you would shake your head and go, that you are absolutely smoking crack, dude. You got to stop. But I would agree with your Ransom. They are going to absolutely be banging at the walls of the castle, demanding universal basic income because there will be so few jobs out there. But same thing, double-edged sword. that comes with requirements, the things you must do to continue to access that money. Now, we're seeing a microcosm of it where the EBT system is being revamped. So what has also currently happened is, since the benefits were turned off, many states are now saying you have to reapply. When you reapply, you have to prove you're a U.S. citizen.
Right.
So, I mean, we're seeing this, but it's a microcosm of, all right, well, things have changed tremendously for EBT recipients where they're going to have to reapply, change the way they do their daily lives. Some of it's going to go away poof in the night for the abusers. Others we're going to get more funds because that is going to just kind of funnel somewhere else into real hands that need it. Like there's going to be an entire restructuring, just like we're seeing the entire restructuring of our entire world happen in real time right now. Now we're just seeing another micro layer of it with the EBT system here. You know, but you're I promise you, as people are going to be begging for the UBI, they're going to be begging for it. Safety net, please. Society's falling apart. We got no other way, please. And then if a war kicks off, hi almighty.
Right. And this is the kind of stuff that's going to lead to that.
I saw this article. I was shocked. I hope you have the video that comes with it.
Let's see here.
Well, Sam Altman didn't want to answer the question.
Let's see if that's on here.
He's like, oh, you don't believe it? I'll buy your shares back. That was his answer.
Right. Well, this is part of the great log off that I was talking about. It not only went for, you know, people in cubicles everywhere processing data for various reasons, but literally humans are building the system that replaces them. And we've brought it up before. It's not unlike when Walt Disney World, you know, went to the system of hiring people from somewhere else and then having the current employees train them to replace them and then fire them and then pay the other people a lesser wage for the same work. But now,
until they get AI'd out, and then
Right.
regular robots cruise around.
right now we're at the extreme.
Yeah, welcome to Disneyland.
We're at the extreme where the programmers and coders, and you remember there was a meme and a little saying going back probably, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, learn to code. Well, unfortunately for those millions of people that have jobs coding and programming, they're kind of redundant now. So what happens when you have a world where all of those people have been fired, laid off of their work, and now the AI and the companies have shrank down to only a few contenders that control it, basically centralized artificial intelligence. But not only that, all of the world's powers right now are trying to fight for what it gets to say, what the AI is allowed to say. What can it actually tell you? How can it transform your life? That is being filtered. So you imagine some, I don't know, really smart kid that's at home and he's using the AI to do complex mathematics that he might use to do a real world science project. And then you realize that a lot of the technology's out. If you're up to date and modern with technology, they are very easy to do at home. And I think that's why in the late 90s, early 2000s, you saw Radio Shack and all its millions of components and parts and catalogs disappear, because that was right before the robotic revolution. And they wanted to make sure that the everyday average Joe at home doesn't have power over that system. And now we fast forward in the future and it's being dwindled down to monopolies of who gets to do it. And at the end, it'll be the governments, obviously, that are in the final vote of what gets to be said or revealed or what you're allowed to use it for, what the processing power is. And we've talked about that too. If we go to a global war, it boils down to a war of processing power.
Who's the end? That would be funny, is because they were making fun of the coal miners in West Virginia. So imagine if there was like 1 or 2 coal miners that are, I am going to learn to code. And then they got on the coding and they learned to code, but they saw it ahead of everybody else at ChatGPT and they were in there day one. And then all of a sudden they're writing, doing thing. And then they write their report and go, you know what? I just took your job using AI. You need to learn to coal mine. Click. You know, because the trades will be coming back and is sweeping around like that. If you are that person that got that demeaning message, learn to code, and you took it to heart, and you learned how to code so well that you were ahead of the next steps on AI, and you put reporters out of business that told you to learn to code, please contact us. I want to have you on the show. That would be such an amazing story to hear it from, like how you'd seen the future, jumped in front of the future, and then outmaneuvered the scoundrel maneuverers. You know, that'd be a great story to have on the show here. So If you know anybody that did that and put reporters out of work, I'd love to hear it. And yeah, what's going to be next? The trades. I saw, I was listening to Mike Adams earlier, and he was saying that those who are going to be able to recycle metals out of disused buildings, that is going to be a skill to have that will be right at the very top there. Now, you can dismantle, 100-story buildings, or you can go in and dismantle 2-story homes or whatever. But it's all going to come down to this insatiable, unbelievable need for power and metals to continue this AI march forward. And again, you hit it on the head. There shall be one. The Highlander, I think Highlander was just more of like a glimpse into how AI is going to function across the planet. There really can be only one. There can be only one.
Here it is, more of it here. Police surveillance using new technologies. And, if you're a normal citizen and you're worried about crime and you see in the crime, and like most people, you can notice that the crime has moved into the areas where people also live. So it's not, segregated to downtown anymore in a lot of places. You're going to beg for the police to do something. The problem is that this problem reaction solution has been going on for a long time. So all of this is just like if you own a window repair company and then you pay a kid, $15 to go around town and bust everybody's windows out with some rocks. Then all of a sudden everybody needs windows and you're the only one selling them. But this is the same thing right here. They are building a police state. There's no other way to say it. And, privacy concerns seem to be going out of the window because the tech is evolving faster than their ability to complain about it, bring it to your government with grievance, and for them to legislate. That could take 10 years. And by that time, all of it's antiquated and out of date and obsolete. And there's some other new tech that's already hitting the market. Like we started messing with those commercials, but now I've seen some. I'm still pretty good at catching what's AI. But it's becoming mind-blowingly believable. So now when I'm watching the local news, I don't know. Is that really happening? I can't tell. Being truthful with critical thinking, knowing that people can produce these things now, images, sounds, it's hard to believe that anybody did anything when they say that this is happening. And then at the same time, the headlines are becoming more and more bizarre. It's all TMZ, National Enquirer type
Yeah,
society.
that is
And
the news now. We're living in idiocracy, man. We're
definitely
living in idiocracy. Hey, can I say something on that too? Now, I look at this feed in Telegram called Neural Fan, and it is mind-blowing AI graphics. Not really people. It's more like cats doing things, fishes jumping through, like just the most incredible animated scenes of anything you could possibly put your mind to. A fish swimming near light speed through a submerged city from 3,000 years ago, like this kind of thing. Whoosh. It is so realistic. It is so realistic. But then the Sora AI, which you're referencing in there, and how it is getting to the point now, the public, what they're giving us in technology is, many years behind what it truly is. So the speed we're seeing this thing jump leaps and bounds from, you could definitely catch it last year, 6 months ago. Well, yeah, you definitely see it's improved, but now we're at borderline where it's almost indistinguishable. So if there was, if this tech really was given to us 15 or 20 years after the fact, or 50 years, can you imagine how good it is now? Even if we have a 2-year-old or 1-year-old version of, like, let's say even like at the bare minimum, what we see in public is at least a year behind what it really is in the corporate world. And that's being generous. It would be indistinguishable by now. A year ahead in this tech is you don't know really the difference between reality and what is, unless you're physically standing there. And again, this hologram around us, could this be bent to in a different type of technology of hacking your visual cortex, your ear canals, the stem from your brain, and plugging something, like, really, if that is able to be hijacked in a wireless fashion, then your literal reality around you can be distorted, where you think when you're standing here in front of something that's your true reality. Then it's another layer deeper, that it's being bent, manipulated, morphed, and you're actually seeing a holographic presence of what somebody wants you to see, and you think that's your own reality versus stepping back on the AI side of things. How far ahead is this tech right now?
I
Cottage
think it,
industry quietly manipulating. Okay.
I think it's more far spread than people realize. And the reason I say that, if you remember a couple of years ago, about 2020, and we were getting those funky pictures of what may or may not be in people's bodily fluids after they took a certain medication. And I looked at it and I said, and I know you remember this conversation, that, it seems that for the years prior to that, probably 5 years or more, certain things were being accumulated in the human body, like plastics, heavy metals, all the things that you would literally need to build a chip inside of your body remotely. Now that sounds way far out there. So I'm just waiting for certain people out there to confirm that that's what's happening, because from what I'm looking at out there, that any day now they're going to have to admit to the public that indeed there is different technologies that you can acquire without giving your consent to the original idea that they posed to give it to you. Now this is talking about all the countries of the world, all of the superpowers. This is what we were talking about earlier. They all are spending billions trying to control what comes out of these chat GPT machines. And then in the backdrop of that, you see the shark tank of different companies being eaten up by the larger companies. And you were saying that there can only be one. Well, that may be the way that the government is going too. And, talking about ideas that they might not let you talk about if you just accidentally said them because you had a thought. You just had a regular thought and you thought, you know what, that technology and this technology might work together to do a certain task if you wanted it to. China unveils jellyfish like surveillance robot for silent underwater missions. Now, what this article doesn't tell you is, ideas like whenever these big old shipping container boats and other big shipping boats pull into dock, even the oil ones, all of them do, they fill up their ballast with water sometimes, and they let the water out. Well, when they do that, thousands of jellyfish get caught in there, and they've been having a problem about different species being deposited in places that they shouldn't be in the ocean. I've read the Save the Earth articles about we're messing up the world with fossil fuels and shipping and blah, blah, blah. But what they don't tell you in this article is the same way that those jellyfish travel, you could accidentally, I don't know, put a couple of these jellyfish right up in there with the school of them. And then you can now,
You would put thousands.
yeah, well, now you can track every boat that goes into every lane. And remember, I think it was about 6 months ago, I read an article talking about the ghost fleet of the invisible trafficking and trading networks that are going on. So these are thousands of freighters, boats, and other things out there turning off their transponders, removing the equipment, trying to circumnavigate the globe without being part of the super surveillance net. Well, things like this will end that immediately because they won't even realize that they have the tech on board. It'll be in a ballast. Nobody goes down there. That's not a place that a person or something goes down in. And then someone's going to have to invent something that goes in there and scans for those things and destroys them. And this thing's made out of what? It's robotics made out of the hydrogel platform, which is basically combining organic type materials with synthetic type materials. So the whole world is literally under a distraction that's not a reality. It's not happening. But there is some very interesting things happening and evolving in the background. And one of those things is the slow.
Well, that hydrogel platform, I've heard of this in many other different applications, but this is the first time I've actually seen it in a real physical object in front of us.
Well, then you got to think: are you talking macro or micro? Kind of. Basically, these are big things made out of
Oh,
stuff.
micro subdermal kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but the hydrogel platform is basically nanotech that can deliver things on a microscopic level as well. So a lot of medicines are going down that route, synthetic DNA, all of that stuff. It's the medium in which you can build things and operate them. From
So I
my
wonder what happens
understanding.
when fishermen catch these. There's a large demand in China for different kind of dried sea cucumbers, different
Yeah.
jellyfish for medicinal purposes. Like, at what point do people that are harvesting these jellyfish just they catch them and that is what they try to turn into another byproduct that's sold on to the 中药 or Chinese medicine, herbal market? what happens when these fishermen start pulling up these hydrogel jellyfish and they're like, yo, you think there's a market for this in China? Like, what?
Right.
The fishermen are going to absolutely see this and be like, this thing is not real. I mean, it is real physically, but they're like, bro, this is not, because I've heard about those insects also that are micros, very small insect, looks like flies, but they're robots.
Right.
And unless you smack one with a fly swatter and then examine under the wings and notice that it's not a fly, if you cracked a fly, most times people either let it drop on the floor or they sweep it up real quick, but they're not examining it thinking it might be an actual transmission robot or a robot of some sort. That's beyond most people's even thought. Like every insect that you hit in the summertime, it could be a robot, and we need to examine every one closely. That's getting, it's taking too many marshmallows to the picnic, man.
Well, and then you have the problem of people that don't understand things in the public. So I'm sure you've come across the fake birds conspiracy phenomenon where people were literally killing poor little birds, and then they would open them up and not see a lot of blood, not realizing that, a little finch or sparrow probably only has like 10 drops of blood total in the poor little animal. They're like, look, it's fake. It's not a real. Well, now they don't really seem that crazy now that there are these products flying around. And this talks about a hydrogel electrode material specifically built for this project. And think about how small it is, 4.7 inches. It's pretty small. It only weighs a couple ounces. And this is on the big scale. Like you said, they have a robot that steers sperm into an egg. We're talking, two different worlds of technology. And people really can only understand what they see for the most part. Like if they see it, they believe it. But how do you see and believe things that are on the microscopic cell that you need complex equipment, electron microscopes, and different stuff like that to even see in the first place?
Yeah, it makes you wonder how the ancients left us so much iconography, stone carvings, these sort of things, as signals that they understood that even way back then. Comment about the birds. We've been taking a few ducks for meat here, and these beautiful cayuga, absolutely stunning cayuga males. They got a green head like a mallard, and they got black feathers, but inside there's iridescent green and blue feathers. Like sometimes they'll glint on the sun, and you're like, oh man, that is like an actual physical blue sapphire and green emerald walking through the sun. Like the most magnificent colors that these birds. But when you flip them over and the wings do that, you see some of those videos where the person had done something with a pigeon wing and they're like, look, there's writing on it. When you get the wings over on some of these incredibly beautiful ducks and these types of birds and chickens and whatnot, when you do the wing like that, you can actually see reflective iridescence in it because, well, that's their pattern. So you could mistake that. Oh, there's writing inside there. But I mean, these are our ducks. We got them. We actually got the eggs ourselves from our own ducks. When they produced eggs, they were fertilized. We hatched them out. We incubated them, took them to the whole incubation period. Now they're old enough to harvest. So I know that's not a robot duck that we have. So when you turn over the wings and you see that iridescence, like those videos where they do that, please be a little discerning on the information you might want to consume. Like there's a huge amount of beauty in nature and just such like mind-boggling colors that you just wouldn't think. So when birds are flying, you got to think they're trying to escape predators. They're trying to confuse predators from beneath them and above them and behind them, right? So what kind of color schemes do you need to like reflect something to make, whoa, I thought I saw it there and I attacked in a different direction. That's what all this is about is, reflectivity to escape. So, I mean, nature, you ever see, how many insects do I see during the summer out here? It is mind blowing, like the greens and the blues and the yellows and the oranges and all these kind of different colors that are so bright and vibrant. I mean, everything has color on it pretty much if it's in nature, unless it's jet black or pure white, and that's rare in itself. So I was going somewhere with the birds, but don't believe everything you see about those videos of an underwing that kind of showed something reflective and iridescent, like, oh, it's got to be a robot. It's not. It's nature. To a point. Now, I know, understand what you're saying. Like it could be.
Well,
maybe.
Is that fruit we're seeing out there in those bins real fruit? Like the questions go on and on. Depending on how deep
real,
you
or
wanna
they
get.
implanted a memory of a real duck, and it's really a robot.
Right. that's the kind of stuff that kind of I'm talking about. And then everybody, the population, the average Joe, has to come back down to earth and stop thinking about those kind of things that are probably happening out there in the world right now. And think about this: uncertainty over federal food aid. And you know what? I do like the fact that normal everyday citizens with money didn't rush to the store and do what they do if you tell them that there's a cold storm coming. Then they'll go wipe out the food. Weren't you telling me something about some cold stuff coming down? And then before we talk about the weather for a minute, the uncertainty of this shutdown reaches a crisis point. And I was just wondering if they were just going to roll out this DHS facial recognition system right at the grocery stores, the one that they say people can't refuse. Because I'm on one side of this idea of deportation, but I tell you what, I'm not doing that. I'll tell them to go, climb up a rope, as to be polite. That I don't have to and will not take a facial recognition scan from some guy in a uniform standing on the side of the road. I'm sorry, I'm just not doing that. It's bad enough I already have to go through checkpoints in which they question my citizenship in the middle of my country. I don't like that either. As an American citizen, I'm saying, why should I, being able to travel down the road, the right to travel and to go about my business and be secure in my papers and all of that stuff? There's this bill of things that kind of outline all these ideas, but I don't feel the need for
And what
that.
happens if you Ransom, walk me through that for a second. If they pull you over and you're like, dude, you have no right to ask that. I'm not going to even answer your question.
Well, you might offend the border
Well,
patrol
what can they
officers
do? I
or
mean, what
whoever.
happens? And that
They'll
would
pull you
literally
out
be
of your.
like, dude, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not going to answer the question. No.
Well,
And
then
then
you're
what
going to have a
happens?
long night. You're going to have a long night. They're going to pull you out of your car. They're going to probably cuff you for their safety. They are going to violate the Fourth Amendment and go through your car and maybe even take it apart. And then when they're done and they don't find nothing, you can try to sue, but the Supreme Court has already ruled that they have a right to stop you and look for human odor and drug contraband. So, under that umbrella, they're allowed to get away with doing that nonstop. Now, I understand that it's your constitutional right and yada, yada, yada. Like I was saying, I don't feel like I should be stopped. However, it's a lot easier to just say I'm an American citizen. They say, can I see your ID? Does it really hurt you to let them see it? But it's a slippery slope once you start volunteering to violate your own rights. Like I was talking about the flock security. Now, people might might say that sounds kind of lefty or whatever. No, that's completely constitutional traditionalist, I guess. I should, and every other person within the borders of our boundaries has a certain right to privacy. However, they're saying you don't have that right by doing this. And if you allow them to do it to a certain group of people, whether they're here illegally or not, the fact is that you will also have to show your face and not be able to refuse facial recognition apps in the future for whatever future law enforcement trend is going on. Here, let me get mine out of the way so we could look at the cold weather. That might
Well, we
just
just wanted to jump over to Civilization Cycle, buy me a coffee, and say thank you to everybody supporting us this week here. Nigglesworth, hey, David, I'm a big fan. I've only ever listened to your podcast. This evening is the first time I caught you guys live. Thank you for finding us live here on we used to be on Revolution Radio, but now on Rumble. Rebroadcasting. Ransom rebroadcasts that in the mornings over on Revolution Radio. So if you want to listen to tonight's episode, Ransom, we can maybe add something in there on that. Big info you're sharing. May I ask why you don't upload these episodes to Podcast World more often? I do at least one a week, possibly two over on the Civilization Cycle podcast. You can listen anywhere podcasts are hosted across the net. Although I found out today, Studio FM, we need to re-upload our listing there. So I've already been on that. I was working through the whole podcast world today. And there was another one, Ghana, that comes out of India. We need to get up on their podcast listing and their service inside there. They have our show, but they don't have any episodes listed. And they have our show art, but no episodes. So I'm like, wait, and we need to get into these two directories. One's in India and the other one, Player FM. So to answer your question, we are trying to and expanding our presence out in the world as we speak on the internet side of things. Homestead Nurse getting us, at the beginning of the show, someone bought 3 double espressos. Thanks always for the conversation. Well, thank you, BB. And Taco Banana says, hey guys, the repo market hiccup on Halloween. Do you think we need to worry about having cash in the bank? And William Hooper, thank you for buying us 3 double espressos. Ransom, I'm going to throw the question back at you tennis style here. Repo, there was a huge crash on Halloween. Everything was like, the amount of damage done in the crypto market alone during that time was just like, how do you have things drop 50 or 40% in like a couple hours, then jump right back up again? It was a purposeful wipeout of almost everybody that was in crypto. Unless you were just sitting there within a wallet and you were like, I don't care what happens to it, you got wrecked. I mean, absolutely wrecked. Because all these stop losses got pulled through on the high side and the low side and just absolutely wrecked and really stripped nearly, I would say, half the wealth of individual holders in crypto got stripped in the last time. So do you think that we need about having cash in the bank there, Ransom? I would say you need to have some cash on hand for sure. Because if the bank's closed down, then what? Then what's going to happen with you? Are you going to be able to, at that point, I got to get back to the screen here. What are you going to do for funds at that point then? I guess would be the question there, Ransom. How much cash would you think would be enough for somebody to have out to be able to hold, to just have outside for emergencies?
At least $5,000.
Just in the house under the mattress or whatever, just you need to pay some bills, man. The airlines are going down. 10% of the airlines are not functioning right now. They're cutting 10% of air flights in America because this government shutdown's continuing. And I really don't have a feeling they're not trying to solve it. It's going to continue probably for a while. This whole EBT thing, again, if they really are pulling people's funds after 48 hours, if they don't use the money, then damn, this is really going to get nasty. And if it continues to get nasty, it's almost like the Corporation of the United States has gone bankrupt. And this is literally the just like sale of assets. And it's just going to go and continue down. Because I don't know if a corporation that's out of business can continue to operate as a corporation. So if you think about that, if the Corporation of the United States actually was defunct as of that government shutdown date, then it won't come back because it's not the Corporation of the United States any longer. It's a bankrupt entity that is going to sell its assets and come back as something new. Hence the stable coin issuance in the genius. Anyway, how much
I
cash
can kind of
is
tell
a
that
long-winded
the
answer?
food stamp in at least $5,000.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's going to last for months or how many months or how much in the hole you'll get trying to patch it up. Like right now would be a good idea to go shopping for Thanksgiving right now before there is any crazy things, because later in the month, obviously, people are going to be trying to travel everywhere. They're going to be spending a lot of money. It might be a lot cheaper for you to just stay home this Thanksgiving. A good idea to just wait out their little games that they're playing. And I'm pretty sure that the SNAP benefits was just a game to manipulate the election. You'll see that they'll reopen the government right after these midterm elections are over, or shortly before that, once they got enough people in seats that they wanted them to get in. And speaking of that, people are deciding to move based on their imagined affiliation. They're literally starting to do, but on the bright side, voting with your dollar is one of the most powerful things that a person can do, or a company, is to vote with their dollar. If you don't like the way things are going in a certain area, you just move your company and allow other people in another place to enjoy whatever it is you offer or the benefits that you get from the local government there. And, I think what's about to really happen, and seriously, is that all of the networks of human safety nets have basically dissolved or dwindled down to nothing, to a super corporate dependency state. And when I say corporate, I mean the corporation that you're talking about failing of the United States. It's government dependency in, when you're talking about 41 million people or 42 million people that are on assistance programs. I know for a fact that some of the assistance programs are set up to make people stay in the system. And what I mean by that is, in certain states, they offer the assistance, but you basically have to be single parents with no job. and you can't have a job because, you know, you have the kids. And then in other states, they make sure that you have to try to look for a job to get the help. The problem is they won't let you have the help past the starting point of your new job. So in other words, they arrange it always to be a handout and never a hand up. No one's going out there for, like, you know, getting to work 6 months and bringing in the benefits and then getting ahead and getting on their feet. That's not how it works. If you start working, then they'll cut your benefits and you're basically bringing in the same amount of income as you were when you were unemployed. So for people that are in that situation, it's like not in their best interest to go get a job. And besides that,
Yeah, they make it
all of
like that's a very good point, man. That is a very I never thought of that. It's just that
there's
balancing
a
act of still keeping you in that lower rut, man, letting
yeah,
you versus letting
it's
you get
a
out.
that's always what it amounts to, is a handout, not a hand up. Our style of help and assistance should be a hand up for citizens so that they could become self-dependent. And they don't want that, of course, especially if you can have, you know, let's say a fourth or 1/5 of the population swinging in one political direction or another based on what free stuff they get. But yeah, the airline thing that you were talking about, I think that all goes into the fact that we are about to go into a new era, and part of that is what I was going to show you here. So all of those safety nets, basically like community. I don't know if you're part of a church organization or a prepping group or whatever it is. The fact is that that's the minority of people. I mean, of the real small minority of people that actually have some kind of system or friends that have any kind of resources. So most people are up the creek without a paddle, and part of it is because we've become so segregated and tribalized that they've managed to get people down to 4 close friends. Now, if you're a surveillance state that's trying to pay attention to trends, groups, grassroots things, the best way to do that is to have it all sectioned off where people are in very small groups of dependency with each other and the system. And then that way you could also, spy on specific stuff. And this goes all the way to the idea of, ads that are specific for you. They're trying to segregate people all the way down to, and it's funny because the system is anti-individualism, but at the same time, they want to reduce you down to a digit so that you can be digitized. And that's part of the reason that you're seeing stuff like this. And I'm seeing no stop to, the destruction of society, whether or not they're just this straight up pollution in an area or them not telling the public the truth about stuff. You might have saw this article from San Francisco with all the radiation levels detected, but nobody's going to take the blame for that, or even it's might be an accident that they even found out about it. And then the
Yeah, wait a second,
administration's
Ransom. Can I stop
yeah.
you? Can I hit you up for a second? Now think about that. You just said you're already talking about Thanksgiving. There are going to be disruptions, and every year anyway around Thanksgiving, it's already just like the most crazy, hectic travel time, blizzards, snow, delays. People are losing their minds anyway,
Right.
and we're going to be at a minus 10%. Just that's going to be the baseline already, minus 10% of the flights. Like, and it's interesting you mentioned that
Right.
it seems like we're entering a new phase of something, because I've talked to a couple other people that feel the same way, like we're at step 2 or the new phase. Can you like define that a little more and what you mean by that new phase or the new world part that we're entering in now versus what that COVID come out of that, some stability a little bit, but now we're entering right back in.
Well, it's the shutdown of movement, a free movement of people with resources. They don't mind if people with zero resources migrate. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people being able to move from country to country, state to state, own their own property, have their own resources. That is being cut out. So if you remember during COVID, what happened? They canceled traveling everywhere. Everybody kind of shut the airlines off so that incoming flights from other countries wouldn't come. You couldn't go here, you couldn't go there. You had to go through their facial recognition stuff. You had to follow their rules. And then now we see that didn't really stop people from doing it. It was like a beta run. So how about if we just reduce the amount of airline tickets that are available out there for you to travel anywhere, and reduce the number of flights, and then have large televised events of the crippling infrastructure of the flight everything about the whole idea of flying places is
Hallelujah.
crumbling. And we were right on that, man. I remember when we did the show about how they stopped using U.S. inspectors, lots of DEI hires at the factories, much more mistakes, no inspections, ever increasing aging and crumbling infrastructure for not only runways, air traffic controllers, but the planes themselves. We've seen everything from doors blow off to fire start, engines fall off, crashing at the start, crashing at the finish. It's becoming a nightmare to even think about wanting to fly. And then on top of that, you have, what's called this misery map here. So these are the main airports in the United States, and that little red graph are the amount of people that are stranded right now as we speak on either canceled or delayed flights everywhere. So you could see like over here out of Illinois and Chicago and Detroit, like either half or a quarter's gone. Out of New York City, over half are delayed or not coming on time.
Man, that is
They're
a
not going at
lot.
all.
That is a lot. You
Look
really
at
don't understand how many that is.
Look at that right now as we speak. I think, let me make sure and I'll reload it in
No,
case.
Atlanta's one of the world's busiest airports. I think it's in the top 3. For sure, America's busiest airport is Atlanta.
So right now they have
25%.
37 delayed flights. But just a minute ago, that was 115 before I refreshed it. But now there's 15 canceled flights and 100 delayed. I mean, it's going on. And different hours of the day, this graph goes bigger. So more red, less green. Then you'll get a little bit of green back. It'll go back. So I've been paying attention to this all week. And basically, they're reducing the ability of anybody to go everywhere. The whole system is collapsing as far as flight. But what's not going to collapse is the need for flight and deliveries and transportation. But they have an answer for that. It's just that people don't like it. So they're going to have to be sold on the idea that it's safer, more reliable if we just allow AI to control the air traffic controllers and the airplanes. Now, you might not know this, but they already fly AI. It's called autopilot, and it's been getting updated each year. They've added a little bit more programs. So now they have intuitive programs in control of the autopilot. So more and more, there's not going to be a person involved in all. There's not going to be some guy going radical or feeling sad. And, supposedly that's the excuse sometimes. They just got depressed or whatever.
That was
Who
an
knows?
excuse when the AI took it into the ground.
Right.
Because there was a competitor building another data center, and the whole entire design crew was on that plane, and AI took that plane down to get rid of the competition. There shall be only one.
And that's why I wanted to go back to all the tech workers being laid off. Now, for years,
There
there's
shall
been
be only one. Imagine if you're right, man. Like, remove the people that can even do the coding, and you're already getting down to there will be no competition except AIs amongst themselves at that point. Humans are still a threat-ish.
Well, that's the thing, is all of these people that no longer work for companies do have a skill set, and they will find you, like the movie. No, I'm just kidding. But think about this, to circle back to this idea. All of these people means that there's going to be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of disgruntled employees with specific skill sets in robotics, coding, programming. And for almost a decade, they've tried to scare the bejesus out of us with the idea of cyber attacks. If you remember, cyber attacks were thrown in your face and popularized and Hollywoodized and put on every news article all the way up until about 2022, 2023. They kind of started laying off on it.
It didn't happen as they portrayed it, did it? It didn't really roll out like they portrayed it would do.
No, there was no reason for it yet. But now, if anything happens worldwide, like say, I don't know, our country decided that another country was an enemy, they might just start having problems in the sky. And they could all be blamed on some hacker sitting in grandma's basement halfway around the world. They did it. That's what happened. It's real easy. And if you think about the assassination attempts of various different people, there's always these lingering questions on who it was and who are they talking to and are there records of stuff. And recently, Discord denied that there was any data or transcripts or any of that of a certain incident that happened recently, and now it's all public that they did indeed. Of course, they keep all records. We've been telling you that over and over again. There's nothing private, not a keystroke, not a conversation, nothing. And it's expanding out into ways where people are worried about feeding themselves and whether or not they're going to pay the rent. They're not busy, fighting the technical revolution of spying and their rights dissolving. They just aren't doing it.
Yeah, it's like this present world is not meant to last past this era. So everything we're seeing decaying there's already something here showing you that it's not meant to go past this time limit here. We're at the very end of it, or they would be repairing it. So it is at the disposable edge of things. So you might have to ask yourself, why is that? Like, what are we going to be entering where none of our infrastructure currently, from the locks to the roads, the ports, and everything in between, is no longer going to be needed in the future? They're letting it go. They're not spending any money because they know at the end of this event, it is not going to be usable any longer, or we won't use it. But they're interchangeable there. Maybe we won't use the roads, but they're still usable, but there's some other way to propel or transport something.
And I think it's funny too that all of these tech firms and corporations that fill a lot of cubicles no longer need people to fly back and forth from New York and San Francisco, because there's such of a technological degree of success with communication now. Those jobs are unnecessary. Therefore, a lot of the flights are unnecessary, because most of these flights were built on business patterns where people needed to go. They needed to be in LA tomorrow. They needed to be in Shanghai. They needed to be in, wherever it was. Now they don't need that. There's just less and less. So you're going to see more and more of the elite being the only people that are really flying on flights around the world. But that's okay.
You're going to have to
Putin
get in on a share on a private plane. That's going to be the future of air travel. So again, if we're talking about the future of air travel, or you're looking for a niche to dive into, hey, note to self here: arranging flights and tickets on private airlines that, because some of these airplanes hold up to 20 people. So imagine if you're splitting the cost, instead of going to a commercial route or getting like a first class ticket, to be able to find those with airplanes that would be willing to like share on the plane. So if they have a 20-person plane, they might be able to get 10 or 15 of those seats filled going over to continent, whatever that is. I'm not going to talk, but it'd be people who had an idea of, let's say I have an airplane that has 20 seats on it, and I'd say, all right, give me some cool people, and we're going to fly over to, but only 10 people extra and with. And it's going to be like hands, private airline. I wouldn't even say airlines, but just private individuals who own their own private jets. Might be the future of transport. You're going to have to find your costly to get in on that too. So imagine a first class ticket costs you X thousands of dollars. Anything transatlantic, trans-Pacific, you're looking at 5, 6, 7,000 at the very minimum. So imagine, and that's with an airline with a bunch of other people, right? Hundreds of people. So what would it cost to get you on a private jet to fly over to Shanghai on a jet of 20, where they're selling 10 seats on the total cost of somebody who owns that private jet? Is it going to cost you 3 times that much? And if you want to go to Shanghai, it's 15 grand to get on their plane. I don't know, but that seems to be the future we're moving into. So again, think about it, arranging people who in the future, if the commercial side of things slows down or whatever, that you are connecting people that jets with people who wouldn't mind having their private planes to go to another spot. That could be a side hustle. Ransom, are you still there? I kind of feed for a second. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm here. The side hustle. That's why you need to expand from more than 4 friends and to people that actually have skills or resources for your common good. And it's just going to have to be that way. Starting out with probably beef being the first one that people are really going to have to start making networks for, is their protein. And they're going to have to take gardening serious. Maybe next year they'll figure it out. But it does seem funny to me that all the travel plans and the food and everything else is kind of coming to a halt here in November. Um, but I think it's just, like I said, most of it's just a distraction away from stuff that they're going to be passing through the new legislature once they're done with the new election. It's something. Oh, I think we're still live, though.
Yeah, I
Anyways,
am. I'm here. I just totally locked up talking about that, and then you froze too, and that's kind of weird. Like we'd freeze just talking about arranging people to get into other people's airplanes as a side
right.
hustle, But that might be the future, really. In the future, think about it. If commercial airline decreases 50%, 50%, and your carbon credit score is only going to allow you a certain amount of flights per year, and you still need to get somewhere else, you're going to have to go in that market, like you talked about, outside the measurable market. Because I'm
Right.
sure the people though that own those private jets are not going to be on that measurable carbon credit score. If they were, like I saw this interview in Norway today, you could just buy it from somebody else. And again, this will allow those who are not traveling and want to stay home for you to buy their carbon credits so you can still travel. Again, the whole thing moving forward is they need to milk your wealth. And if they can charge you carbon credits and then you'll still be willing to pay that excess fund tax or whatever, or urgency tax to buy other people's carbon credits because they're not going to use them. And you need to have that first before you can go anywhere, in addition to the extreme prices. It's almost like we're reverting the clock back because, the story is if you wanted to fly somewhere in, say, the 1940s or 50s, you had to be wealthy. There was no poor people in like scrappy clothes flying on the airplanes in the 50s. No way. It was, and you go back to the 30s and the steamers and this sort of thing, you had to have money to travel then. It was not everybody traveled, man. It was exclusive and it was expensive. And only the wealthy traveled. Seriously, only the wealthy traveled. And please remember us here, buymeacoffee.com/civilization. Also, civilizationcycle.com. Jump over there to the website, newest player. I just loaded a new episode there. I think it was episode 578 or something around that number. And information to help us improve our lives, get those conversations started, find the solutions right over there at civilizationcycle.com. Sign up for the newsletter. We'll give you 10 bullet points of these points we talked about, and another way to start the conversation and think about solutions with others. But we're going to take a 2-second break here. Please enjoy our sponsors. We think there's some amazing products that will help enhance your lives as well. We wouldn't put them on here unless we believed in these. So support our sponsors, and it's a way to keep us on air as well. Be back shortly after the break. Roll it, Ransom. I only hold this still for so long.
I don't know what happened. They're gone. The buttons, I mean, the commercials don't seem to be loaded anymore here. Just the spots they were. So I guess, we could just do this here. Yeah, they just
I'll keep it
disappeared.
going here. Yeah, again,
I'll just we'll just play some music for Smoke It If You Got It.
And that's what I used to look like right on the left there. Can you believe it? When I had only one double espresso, now I had 2 double espressos, I get like that. So please support us with the double espresso. Buymeacoffee.com/civilizations cycle. Thank you for joining us for hour 2. We had a little difficulty there with our sponsors, but please remember Alfa Vedic, Dental Solutions, Holistic Dental Care, also Hemp Lucid, as always, giving us some support. They have some amazing sleep products, and I know a lot of people are super stressed out these days. They can't really, fall asleep that easily, but it's all natural and it's not melatonin. It is a different blend and mix that I've tried it. Doesn't make you feel groggy in the morning. You kind of pop up really like, well, that was a great sleep, With the time change, I seem to be doing way better getting up with the light coming in a little bit earlier than it was before, because it wouldn't get light here until like 8:15 in the morning. And I like waking up around 7 or so, 6:45, 7. That's kind of my sweet spot to get up. But that time change flipped us back where the sun comes up a bit earlier in the cool time. But all that we're talking about, also VNI.life/civilization. You can check out the products there. Amazing, different way to allow all of those products, whether it be the rehydration or the micronutrients, the way they have formulated it, it gets into all the cells. Like you waste nothing, it goes in all the cells. And that's the whole thing, is about getting hydration into the cells. A lot of that doesn't make it to where it's supposed to go. But VNI.life, I'm going to have CEO coming on next week, and we're going to talk about some of the chemical properties of the way they create the products. Again, like nothing wasted, everything used. It's such a digestible and like fully functional ingested product to hit where it needs to go. So think about those. Those links are in the description box below tonight in the show notes. VNI.life/civilization. Also Hemp Lucid, taking us in on the sleep products there. And as always, Alfa Vedic with the dental solutions. You can check all those 3 links out. And please remember, just like buy me a coffee /civilization cycle, any purchase you make helps keep this podcast and broadcast on air, bringing the information like this, because we've really come to this, like we've flipped over. People were saying, oh, we beat the whole globalist thing because COVID. We came out and we all said no, and enough people said no, and it's done. Well, we got a little reprieve for what, a year and a half, and it is full throttle again. This time it is absolutely based on the economy. It's going to be to strip wealth out of anybody who has any wealth left. And it's also going to be what we've seen with those Agenda 2030 goals: limiting travel, limiting consumption of products, meat, limiting the amount of clothes you can have, limiting your movements, limiting of private properties, limiting of all these things. And it seems like it's moving fast forward. And I've heard many people say, I can't believe it's happening this fast. It is like lightning speed at the speed it is. And because tonight, when we started with the show, there are so many distractions across every genre of anything that somebody can find a news feed on. There is just like once in a year, once in a 5-year mega story happening all at the same time. I'm sure if you went to a cat forum, there would be like once in a couple 1 or 2 year cat story be going on to even confuse the cat ladies out there. I'm telling you, it's everywhere. And we're all infighting. Have you noticed? Even with this whole MAGA Republican conservative movement, now they're having everybody within there turn on each other and have battles within that space itself. Like this is the direction it's going. That after I started to see everybody in those more of sense movements start arguing amongst themselves instead of still outside looking at the danger out there, I know we're at the end of the system now. We absolutely are. They just can't hold together if the thing from collapsing is now collapsing in on itself. It's like a full foundation pillar collapsing in on itself that's going to take the rest of the building down in slow motion.
What were you saying about the catastrophe?
Somewhere.
What were you saying about if you went to the cat world
and kills a cat? That's a
I
catastrophe.
told
Yes,
you.
that
Like,
is
no, I'm just
exactly
joking. You
right.
told
That's a
us.
once in a year cat video. Come on, man, you found it. I can't
Right.
believe it. Oh, that is the sickest little.
No, yeah, of course there's a catastrophe going on for the cat people and the dog people. They're probably worried about, if they don't have money for the food, how are they going to, use their money they usually use to feed the pets and all that stuff. And,
No, look how
here,
ingeniously they put two genres together: robotaxis, running
right.
over a pet cat in the store that was trained like a human that greets people when they come in. But how did they put a robotaxi in there? Like, look at the messaging.
Well, it's not
Robotaxi.
good messaging for the robots because they squished the poor little kitty that everybody liked. There it is, murdered by a robot before his time.
Oh,
No,
I'll scratch
but
your eyes
yes,
out if you get too close.
just
Get that thing away from me, dude. That's a furball.
just like you were saying though, that is happening, and there is an emergency for everybody anywhere. Are you a feminist? Are you appalled by one of the Trump supporters grabbing the Mexican president by the? No, I'm just kidding. He didn't actually do that, and he's not a Trump supporter. I was just making light of it. But this is,
Didn't somebody arrest him? I mean, if that was like,
oh
how'd you
yeah,
get that close to the president anyway? That's a complete failure right there on security. Like, how'd you get so close?
woo! Oh, almost
Yes,
got
sir.
it.
On the neck,
Almost.
grab those nays and grab the hair. Oh my!
Yeah, that's
That is a
messed up.
complete failure. How did he do that? Oh, I loved you. You're such a beautiful.
That was my
Be my
first
presidential
question.
wife.
That was
How
my
did they
first
get
question
that
too.
close? That's crazy. How do you get that close to the president? What if he'd had a knife, man?
Well, what's
That's
not funny
crazy.
about the circumstances in Mexico right now, all kinds of people. Matter of fact, the same thing is happening in Germany with the AFD party that's happening in Mexico. That if you have a certain opinion and you run for office or hold office, you better look out and you better get better security than evidently the president of Mexico has, because that looked like one of those Girls Gone Wild videos where the drunk guy stumbles out of the bar and just gropes somebody inappropriately there. But that was the president of Mexico, where her security services didn't see that guy coming or whatever happened.
How could you not?
And during the same cycle of news, one of the mayors that would be running for against her in the next election, he got capped at his own party right around Halloween.
Yep.
But
Messaging. We got that close to you too now. You better exactly do what we say and
it might
want. We just proved it that we could get that close.
yeah, it
That was
might
a
actually be
message.
that.
Think
I
about
think
that for a second. And that was a message there.
that was definitely one of the messages to them. And they got there's so many things. You still worried about your egg prices and your chicken prices? Well,
No, we're turning all the birds into meat now because just as a thing on a homestead out here to bring them through the entire winter, you're going to spend like, oh my gosh. So like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in feed bill. Your feed bill is going to be huge through the winter because they can't forage out. Like we let our stuff like get out and go wander around all day in the field and eat bugs and do all that fun stuff. You can't do that in the winter. You got to 100% feed them. There's no wild foraging going on. So like taking birds right now, I am going to say if you used to buy from somebody who was on sort of, hey, they got a farm, we get eggs every week. It's the middle of the summer. When it comes into winter, they're going to start culling off a lot of their flocks also because feed bill's just too high. Unless it's like a banging business where you're getting $6, $8 a dozen, people just can't keep them through the winter. It's too expensive. So most people are cutting down. Like we're taking ours probably 60, 70% down. But again, that'll be a bunch of meat through the holidays and things. So if the egg production on the homestead side or the local farmer side reduces that much as well, I mean, we're trying to keep some egg layers, but everybody else fire sale, well, not fire sale, but boiling pot sale. There's going to be less eggs. So don't rely completely on your farmers through the winter because they need to reduce because it costs way and all the feed, our food's gone up. Damn, the feed's gone up too. It used to be like $5.99 a bag. Now it's like $13.99 for the same, like layer pellet and that sort of thing. Soaring costs on Thanksgiving. But what's interesting is I watched the Walmart CEO interview and he was with somebody who was trying to antagonize him. saying that, oh, everything's so much more expensive. And he goes, no, actually the cost of turkey's down for they had like a bundle package where it came with like all the trimmings and different types of veg and all these things. Like when you get that pack, it's actually down some percentage from last year. But now it seems like the turkey prices are going back up again. See, you're getting a mixed message because I directly saw and watched that CEO of Walmart give the briefing on what the Thanksgiving meal package was, and it was far less than last year. It was definitely easily 10% less. But then you're getting the Sun here saying that your Thanksgiving meal is going to be 25% pricier. That is,
And you're not going to get it with EBT. You're going to buy it with cash.
oh, okay. But anyway, there's a huge disconnect between CEO president telling you their food costs have gone down, and then the Sun saying it's 25% up. So again, be discerning with your news feeds on what you're going to believe.
Well, it makes me think that, this article has nothing to do with EBT. It might mention it, but they're
Sun's
talking about
an English publication anyway.
Yeah, they're talking about just prices going up, in general, though. And it's funny to me because, like, over here,
Can you go to the travel section? I'd like to see what's over in travel anyway. I'm wondering what the travel. Yeah, right there. Click on. I'm curious. Everybody, let's go on a journey. This is for England, so English viewers like. Yeah, U.S. flyers scramble for flight refunds. See, it's global now, isn't it? See, we're on an English newsfeed now, so it's not U.S. centric. So it's interesting to look in to see the places of interest for English travelers, and then B, here they're telling you also, U.S. got all kind of problems here now for flying.
Right. And I was just thinking though, if there, a minute
Going
ago I was talking
nowhere,
about
flyers of millions could be left stranded, left bottom there.
right. I was talking about how, it might cost a little more. You should stay home this Thanksgiving. And then we were also talking about how there was no real panic at the first of the month, right? So people were waiting to see what happens. Some states got a little bit of funds, like you were talking about. But you were showing me that cold blast that's possibly coming in here. Now, one thing I do know from used to work in the grocery business myself is that anytime the weather gets cold or snows or even hints at problems, they clear out the grocery store. And this will be right, like what, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving or a week and a half or whatever before people are usually buying it. And then you also have, people talking about how much more things are going to cost. And that's probably going to continue into December around Christmas time. They want to scare everybody, and that stocks and stuff are related directly to news articles that may or may not be out there. And you got the speculators that speculate on this and that, and that's who really decides how much something's going to be in the next month. They raise or lower prices based on what they think is going to happen. But whenever you see this is funny to me because we've literally seen this same headline, I think 10 years in a row. 10 years in a row, every year, the bird flu surges amongst poultry, and then they scare the bejesus out of everybody about prices of eggs and chicken and turkey and yada, yada. They do it every year. It's like, don't you remember last year that you guys had this same article that pops up? It seems like they know that. But David was showing me this polar blast that we're probably going to be getting. And I was just thinking that'll be the catalyst for people to go out and over grocery shop. My advice is to go out right now at the beginning of the month and go ahead and get whatever you need. And you will probably pay a lesser price for it now than you will in 2 weeks. I'm just saying. Nope. Here we go. We can't hear you though.
Okay, here we go. GF, anybody out there?
There we go. Boom.
Can anybody hear me? Here we go. GFS model. Now,
Yes.
as we come through, it's going to be rather warm. And can you see this ransom? And then boom, and then right about there, record cold, November 10th, all the way through the southeast. So if we're talking about grain crops or any kind of crops, I don't care what you have, because there's a lot of late season veg and sort of things that hangs on from that line at Tennessee all the way down to the Gulf Coast. Pumpkins, you know, beans, like I say, okra. There's all kind of things that hang on late that people rely on. The mustard greens, the kale, all these things. But we're coming into incredibly hard freeze when these plants haven't really like hardened off yet. They'll get it, and they'll get a little cooler and a little cooler, and they get more used to it and a little cooler as they go down, and they'll get into their dormant stage. Well, this thing is just going to hard flash freeze them. And the gardeners around here, anybody's doing like seasonal produce, there's still pears out on the trees, there's still apples, that sort of thing.
Better
When
get
that
'em.
hard freezes, we're talking about billions in lost produce down here in the Southeast US when they're getting into late November before they really finally get everything off of out of the gardens, out of the fields, off the trees. It's like late November because it stays warmer down here like that. It's not like Michigan, bro.
Right.
People still pulling stuff off the trees in the first weeks of December for apples, pears, these kind of things. So if that hard freezes, then you got to think about what about the pecan growers, everybody else, you know, everything. This is really unusual. But if you go back to 1880, this is when they were talking about there were two different like Ryan Maue and Big Joe Bastarde. They were saying 1860 and 1880 was the last time we saw these temperatures this early in the year. Was back in those years. 1860, just a few years before the Civil War. And then 1880 was the last time. Now, the 1880s were official records. That's kind of when they agree that 1880 was the start point, and they actually count those because the thermometers were good enough at that point. There's still, you know, you could go back to the 1600s. They had thermometers. They were very rudimentary. You come into 1700s, there's some improvements on them. When you get into the middle 1800s, they're pretty good. They're kind of equivalent exactly what we have today. So they do count those measurements in like 1860. Because the tech was there. It's not like it didn't have thermometers in 1860, you know. Those guys dragging thermometers behind the ship, like trying to get water temperatures in the British Navy, all that kind of stuff, like that's old. That's really old. So the real temperatures that we're coming back to, at least go back to 1880, 1860. We're talking 150 years minimum on the freeze here. This is going to be an extreme cold event. But here's what's the dangerous thing. It comes in super cold like that, lightning fast, massive front, thunderstorms, crazy anomalies with this, tornadoes and thing, and then it gets blown out. And that, look how far down it goes. They're talking way down, like hard freeze in Florida. The citrus crop down there's not ready. No way. You're going to be damaged, everything. But look how hot it gets again. And this is the thing, like after those crops freeze, if they could slowly warm up, or if they can keep them at a frozen temperature, there's a possibility to pick them and put them in through the freeze process. That'll still retain some, but they won't get full price for it. It's, you know, it's damaged on the ag, but it's not completely destroyed. There's a difference.
Right.
But as it heats right back up, all that fruit's going to, or whatever is out there is going to immediately melt and just turn to soggy mush. There's no salvaging that. It goes so fast from record cold to record heat again, or maybe not even record heat, but look at those red temperatures. You're looking like something, this is degrees Celsius. So that means like 12 or 16 above normal. And those same areas that were just, you know, something like 20 or 30 degrees Celsius below normal. And you got to release Celsius. So let's say 20 Celsius is approximately 29 Fahrenheit below normal. And then when you swing it on the other side, like 12 to let's say 15 Celsius is around 23 degrees Fahrenheit above the normal. So you're going from that huge, incredible swing into hard freeze all the way back up into massive thaw almost instantly. Like anything in the field is not salvageable at that point. If it stayed frozen, yeah, there's a possibility. But look how long this heat stays around, and it stays all the way through November, through Thanksgiving. And look how brutal this thing is, like 30, 30 degrees Celsius is like 44 or 45 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. And that's coming up way in Minnesota and all these things at the end of the year. Like, you got to think about wildlife. How is wildlife going to cope with this? How is wildlife going to cope with that? You got to think about all these insane things that are happening with these temperatures. Like this, in my opinion, if you could own the weather by 2025, this is personally what I would do, and had envisioned how crops would be wiped out. Now, I wasn't going on it with the military tech side of things or with like the mad scientist technologies. I was just looking previously at the Maunder minimum and seeing where those cool patterns had flowed through from like Saskatchewan and that sort of thing, down through our grain belts, straight down into the Southeast US, whipping out somewhere around like middle Georgia, South Carolina. Like that huge streak of blue was like to 2 degrees Celsius below normal, which is right around 3.5, all pushing 3.8 Fahrenheit. Looking at that pattern, there's the disruption, and here I'm looking at it again. I would like to, I'll wide it out here for you, but this is like, you got to think about that is exactly where that same striated pattern, Ransom, if you could do me a huge, man, can you look up Maunder minimum temperature reconstruction map in some kind of search engine for an image search? Maunder minimum reconstruction temperature map. And then maybe if we can line those two up and put them together, because the striation of extreme heat disrupted crops, but there was this exact same striation of cold, and it wasn't see, this is the thing, they couldn't measure it in terms of like we can today. So the disruption was a disruption in temperature. And again, in the 1600s, we're talking like 1640s. So I'm just, they were using proxy data for like tree rings and this sort of thing, and sediment deposition and ice rafting, debris, melt fields, and things like this coming off the coast. When you have an iceberg or an ice raft, there's always stuff in it like rocks. And the further it can float out, when those larger rocks melt out of the ice and sink down, they can trace from the coastline how far out, how many miles, tens of miles, 100 miles out, before these large like boulders will drift down, and they'll make a pattern on the seafloor, and they'll be able to know that, man, that ice coming off that thing was massive, because the boulder field and the large rock field is 100 miles offshore. And when ice was smaller, that same deposition of boulder field was like 12 miles offshore. So they can also measure like where things are deposited, like rainfalls, how much silt or larger sediment got washed into a lake. Then they drill the cores out of that. That's how they came up with their temperature reconstructions for what we're seeing, because they didn't have temperature stations in like 1640, 1650. So it's all reconstructed data, and they're using like different kind of isotopes, like oxygen 18 to see what the rainfall is, these kind of things. Carbon 14, they're trying to date back in things on actually using the physical substance to really get a data on it, because it'll get overlaid on a disaster layer, these kind of things. I do like the beryllium, though, and those different types of isotopes, because they can wire in the temperature, rainfall pattern, cosmic rays, no less. Like, was there more solar radiation or less? But did you find any of that with the, let me see if I can find it myself here. Temperature reconstruction map. I used to look for this stuff all the time. There it is. That very one I'm looking for is right there. Okay, so Ransom, let me pull this image in. I'm going to share this tab instead right there. So if you were kind enough to stay with us for that, you can see that striation. Yeah, it's right there. See the one where my mouse is coming across there? Maybe not with that one, but here it is. So this area is the same area that we're going to see extreme record heat all the way to the record cold down to the southeast US. One thing that it has in common, it has that very same striation from the same areas in Alberta and Saskatchewan all the way down to the southeast US. Notice that as a fact, is a massive, I mean massive, incredibly gargantuan disrupted weather. And that's what that determined. And then if you look at the right there, what we're doing is looking straight down on the North Pole, and we're looking at the temperature now over Asia and China, that sort of thing. That is completely disrupted and cold as well. So if you were going to look over Russia and down into that, blue goes down into Heilongjiang, it goes into like Korea and down in, barely touching into Japan down there. That whole area. So think about Asian crop yields getting totally smacked and knocked out from Korea all the way through Japan, parts of China, Russia. Those are major grain growers. So if you start to look at some of these things that the wars we're experiencing, it's also about grabbing onto grain producing areas across the planet. It's about grabbing those grain baskets before somebody else can. So if you're talking about AI and the need for electricity, that you're going to grab on, destroy another AI plant, and then grab its electrical supply. It's no different. You have superpowers looking at the new grain fields that will be when we come into sort of cooler growing conditions and not as much food. So, again, when this era seems like it's finished and nothing's meant to last past this era, as Ransom so eloquently spoke in the beginning of the show, that nothing's being repaired. It's all in disrepair. So this is what I think, it's not meant to last past this, Period. It's not. So we're at the end of and they're arguing amongst everything that's supposed to be steadfast and resisting everything else is also crumbling in. So if you look at that, we're at a very special juncture in time. I think maybe, I don't know, somebody knows that the crop losses are going to be too big to cover up any longer. So
Yeah, we might want to make friends in warmer places and stuff. Just saying. Or enemies.
Oh, the Tigray fighters, my friend, in Ethiopia. I want to bring that story up too.
So you know, Trump says that he's not putting troops on the ground there. And I mean, he said that, but he wouldn't be the first in a long line of politicians to say something and then change their mind later or change what they're doing. And, you know, we have guys down there training in Puerto Rico for jungle situations again. But look what the cartel's training right now. Look at what they're doing. So they're literally seizing gold mines, you know, for funding. A gold mine in Mexico was taken over by the sons of the drug lord Joaquin El Chapo. I think that's the guy that we even have in jail there. So it's kind of weird that his people are out down there gold mining.
They're
That's
gold
how it's going.
stealing. So imagine they're going to have to get that ore out of there somehow and get it refined. Like the ore itself, you're talking like an ounce per ton or two. I mean, on a good find, on like a very dense find, you're talking about tons and tons and tons of rocks to get 1 ounce out. It's not like, hey, it's there and we're just going to dig up gold.
Right.
And it depends on what kind of gold it is anyway. There's different kinds of gold in the veins.
I think they were really just hiding in it because that shows you where we're going. Just think Afghanistan caves. But then you so happen to have a couple villagers down there picking around while they're down there, you know, for nuggets.
Yeah, they blew up all those emeralds over in Afghanistan. Like their mining techniques were terrible. They'd use dynamite in there to blow the caves off when they would find like an emerald vein instead of going in and mine it and they just blast it out and whatever's left of the pieces. Hey, good enough. Instead of getting that big couple $1 million chunk, we blew it into, you know, $100 $5 pieces. It's all good, man.
Right. I think what they're planning, you know, we were talking about distractions, man, and let me get this.
This will go big. Is that a Chinese astronaut there that you're seeing?
They're stranded in space, but
Well,
like
see,
if you
that's going to dominate the Chinese media, how good their tech is to go and rescue them. And it's almost like those American movies where they need to go up and rescue them. Dude, that's going to be dominating the Chinese feed. So there's their distraction.
Right.
And then for the space people, we got Atlas. Come on, man. It's an alien craft. It's sped up again. And it's slowing down and it's moving and it changed course. And
yeah, well, it's funny how, you know, the stuff that they're actually sharing. Obviously, we don't even, that I know of, even have a telescope to get some kind of images like what's going around the internet now. They got some, you know, some pretty spicy ones. I could redo it, but for the most part, we're just looking at a group of pixels from any real telescope or anything. And even if it was something that changes trajectory, I was going to bring this up a little while ago. If there were, or we happen to be phasing into an era where, let's say, not a fake reality, but a real reality where extraterrestrials are interacting with humans on a real, you know, idea, there's not going to be too many pilots or things up in the skies seeing it or being able to report on it. Matter of fact, all that'll be up there are AI powered aircraft that are easily manipulated on what you're looking at, you know, through its cameras, through its feeds. I don't think you're going to get any more Tic Tac videos or things like that after there's really no people running things in the sky. But as far as this goes, this was one of the greatest distractions of my lifetime for some people. I really didn't put too much, you know, into it. But they're creating.
I've been following it for quite some time.
Yeah,
now,
me
since
too.
The anomalies came out.
But it's become like an entertainment to see the fake generated things that are also out there.
Fake alien invasion.
Right. And then you got what you were talking about, these guys trapped in space there.
That'll be a Chinese diversion for their news feed too. We're rescuing our space program. We're going to get them down, and you know they're going to get them down, and everybody's going to be a hero.
Right.
Inxiong. That's how you
know,
mama. Oh, in China they used to give a hero mother. If you had 10 babies, the state would give you an award and a big Inxiong mama, like hero mother, to have 10 babies. Because back then in the 60s, they thought they were going to fight America and they needed more people. So if you had 10 children, awesome amente. And then you had like 40 million or 50 million more boys than women, and then it's just created a lot of problems. So
Not going good for equal rights
Hello
there
to
for
our
women.
mothers.
Jeez. No, I was just thinking, they put this thing
Be a
out
baby
there
factory, bro. The
and
state
we
needs
have
to be a
World
baby
War
factory.
right. They're putting out on the news feeds the World War III constant threat, like if we lived in the previous Cold War, and the constant threat of that. And then you see stuff. Oh, I wonder why the Chinese guys have to stay in space a little bit longer, or did they really get struck by a mysterious object? It's like they put out that kind of stuff where there's just endless amounts of questions and distraction that people will be coming up with conspiracy theories trying to explain in the void of actually any real information. And I keep finding this scenario with no matter what world event it is, whether it's an assassination, a big buy off in the stock market, or a stock up and down or whatever, there's a conspiracy behind it. And all you have to do is not say anything, any real details, or do any real formal investigations in it, and then you allow the internet to go nuts. But then on top of that, you now have algorithms and AI producing more and more realistic things to add to it, to a point where we're at that point. No longer can you believe what you see. We don't even know that the you know news agencies or governments or any of that are giving you a real story at all. It could be fabricated from the beginning. So any, yellow cake uranium videos that might come up in the near future, you might want to question, like, is that really happened? Did they really do that?
Yeah, because there's one that's kind of fit in here that the American news feed is full of one thing, but here's the next one. Like, the new Renaissance Dam is the largest hydroelectric dam in Africa, and everybody was laughing as a white elephant project when the World Bank first funded it, because it didn't get that much rainfall up there, and they were talking about global warming, and it was going to get drier and drier and drier. Yet the World Bank funded a highland dam called the New Renaissance Dam, Ethiopian New Renaissance Dam. And it was supposed to take 7 to 9 years to fill it, but with the strange changing weather patterns, it filled in under 2 years, which was 5+ years faster. So they're generating a huge amount of constant hydroelectric power. Now, the next step of these dams is six more going down the same highlands trajectory, feeding off the first one. And then it ultimately goes down to Aswan Dam down there at the base of the Nile, because that's where the Blue Nile and the White Nile split. And then they join back together from the split and then head down to Aswan. And that's where Egypt gets all its hydro. So I was so worried that they were going to cut off the water and do crazy things. All right, so that electric line and that constant electric power and all that is coming down. And where is it going to? So this is the thing. They're fighting over electric transmission lines here. So before it was always about fighting over oil. And it was always about fighting over, natural resources. But this time, this fight is fully and absolutely about electrical lines. And it's interesting, 600,000 people have died from that. 300,000 have left. So almost a million people have gotten out of the way of these electric lines because of, well, whatever the danger was. So here's this new Renaissance Dam, and I'll show you exactly where it is. This is where the Blue Nile and the White Nile meet, and then it goes further down from Sudan over to Egypt. You remember, it flows to the Mediterranean Sea. And this is what Ethiopia is going to electrify all of northeastern Africa. And look at such the wide girth of this thing here. And if you think about the potential of Africa, the first place that is going to have total control over the entire economy of Africa moving forward is here, because they have constant electricity. And what does constant electricity give you? It gives you AI. And if they have AI, then they can set up, and they are setting up, manufacturing centers, smelting, ports, and all these things, and railroads, bringing everything to this electrical depot, for a better term. And this is the whole reason that it's gone off the rails over there. So if you're looking at something here, these countries have had, conflict for thousands of years. All right. So what is going on with the willingness to have 1 million people move out of the way, 1 million, to put power lines in to electrify all of Northeast Africa to start the new economy in the largest continent on the planet. Like, again, the reason that the refugees were allowed to flee in the tens of millions, they're about, last count I heard, so it was like 20 million had gone from like the Sahel and North Africa and like Central African countries up to Europe, and they were welcomed with open arms. Well, that's 20 million less people in that area when they come in with new development, new crop zones, new economic zones, new factory zones, new mining, new whatever, city building, construction. None of them are there. They're all in another place. So this Ethiopian thing is really interesting for me, how a war is going on to clear a path for these electrical lines to shoot through unmolested to power Northeast Africa and the data centers that shall be there as well. So if you want to kind of mix those two together, I think that's a good starting point, you know?
I guess
Just saying.
the question is who's the major funding behind that? Is it the Western world or the
World
Eastern
Bank,
world?
International Monetary Fund.
So now you know why we're not bombing it into oblivion like Gaddafi's projects and stuff. There's only two reasons to really have the war in those areas. That's either, like you said, to clear out the area so that they can put in their project, or somebody's trying to do a project they didn't approve of, in which case they would just blow it all up. But think about the history of Africa. There's never really been a program like that one so far successfully grow into reality without some kind of strife going on. And that seems to be going full head of steam. And that's the same area that they want to build the tunnel over to Europe, right?
Yeah, and that's a full area that's coming on with Agenda 21 in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam. These areas are 2030, excuse me. Like there's a couple 2030 projects going on there that are the only ones in Africa. Now there is one in Nigeria and Lagos as well, but most of them are centered over on the eastern side there. Kenya, Nairobi, 2030 city. All these 2030 agenda plans are all fully ingrained, like fully functional, running full steam ahead, especially in Kenya and Tanzania and Ethiopia, by the way. Now, Ethiopia, back a little primer here, before the Civil War, Eritrea, that area that is now on the Red Sea up there that broke away during their civil war, that was all part of Ethiopia originally. I mean, going back in very short modern history, we can go back further and who divvied up after what, after World War II, and back into the czars and all these things going back. We can go back thousands of years when the Ghana Empire was running through there, and the Aksum Kingdom with the gold coinage, say 400 AD. I mean, the frankincense and silk routes were all right along in there too. Like all that cross-border trade back then of gold, silver, frankincense, and myrrh, like that's a real deal. That all ran through that area. Like, these borders are porous at best, and like the history morphs in. Like you're telling me, well, Ethiopia was right where the Aksum Kingdom was. And so after the Romans had collapsed, they had the most pure weight for gold coinage anywhere on the planet. Like their weight and measure system was the weight and measure system to look up to at that point. They took over Roman coinage at that. So think about that transition of they dominated the weights and measures of gold system in Ethiopia. Aksum Kingdom, AXUM, check it out. Do some research on it. And then come full circle now, it's just like this really poor place with zero infrastructure. And they were leaders. They traded with the Ghana Kingdom too. They had like this, if you think about BRICS, the way they would swap gold on the trades to equal out what wasn't equal, with like a timber trade for a grain, for like a wheat trade out. Okay, you give me some lumber, I'll give you some wheat. We'll take it equal pricing. We'll swap it off. Okay, there's a few bucks left over. We're going to settle that in gold. That's what they were doing way back with the Ghana Kingdom and the Aksum Kingdom. Like everything we're seeing is nothing new. Gold, like gold settlement systems across Africa, that's what they were doing 600 AD. Like what the hell happened at that point? And we're back in here and they're fighting civil wars and they got no infrastructure, no running water. Everybody's sick. Nothing's happening. It's like ridiculous. And then all of a sudden the World Bank funds this giant like white elephant. And now they're back in the driver's seat again of Africa, of dominating Africa economically. Like it's weird how it went this big circle where it's almost like any Yuga cycles that we see, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, the Golden Age, and then it swings back down, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age. Is like, everything is a cycle. We're in a circle. So where does that take the United States? We're in the collapse. We're coming down. Like everywhere you look, it's just a cycle repeating itself in history again and again over centuries and millennia. We're not talking like years like we are now. We're talking millennia, cycles changing, and all, an enormous amount of Africa is coming back green again as well. So it's interesting how, just on a focal point here, they're tossing all of the new economic development for all of Africa and the Northeast. The full Sahel is getting a tremendous amount of new rainfall, both from that like Horn of Africa side all the way over, and then the Sahel side way over in the Atlantic. All that whole band is getting tremendous amounts of natural moisture. So crops are growing incredibly, lakes are filling back up. And then suddenly we decide that this is the place to be. Well, it would be for the future, for at least the next 200 to 500 years, because that's where everything's going to reestablish itself. Other places are going to start going offline while these new places come online. And new economies after this collapse need to revamp themselves and restart and restructure and be a new debt-based system and put, what about Poland again? Like you could go back thousands of years into Poland and that whole area up there in the
Well,
in the Baltic states. You're looking at like Lithuania and Estonia, these whole areas, man. You're going back way, way, way back in history into all these places. And again, I would mention it's just a cycle as they come up, transit, dominate, get pushed to the wayside, collapse, and then they're back in the rebuilding phase to come up and dominate again. It's weird how everything's moving in a cycle. It's like we got 207 different cogs and wheels of the cycle of just the planet's economic system and the superpower powerhouses.
right.
Think of a gear watch with 207 different gears, not just north-south orientation, but like east-west, north-west. You got like a XYZ ABC axis on this thing moving like this, something, this is the way it really is twisting and working. In my opinion, that I'd seen in the workings of the cosmos, in a crystal blue sky, too much mushroom that day, and I could see the cogs of the universe working up there. Kid you not. Crystal blue sky, and it broke open, and it was just like this moving, just massive cogs of wheels and like ethereal energies and shit. It was cool. But I see the same thing with all these nations and how the economies are blending and bending through millennia. It's cycles on top of cycles, intertwined with cycles. I'll leave it there.
I was just going to say, let's check on.
He's like, oh, just like so casually. Okay, great. Let's keep
Well, I
keep
was
going.
going to
Dave.
say, let's check in on those people that left that area you were talking about. What's going on where they went, which is Europe. And this is what's going on in Europe. 500,000 volunteers to reinforce defense of something that hasn't happened yet. Meanwhile, over here, we're just building doomsday weapons all day long, and on the other side, they're starting production too. And then NATO chief urges Europe to prepare for a long-term world war with Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Long-term, but that's all right because they got all those new helpers that can help volunteer for the war there. And what happens all around? You have a whole area where you get to reduce the population of those people that left down there in North Africa and around there. And then you also get to reduce the population of the native Europeans and the Russians and the Iranians, if everybody really did get involved. And then, in the background, we got Elon Musk winning $1 trillion Tesla pay package. Which way are we going? Are we going robotic? Are we going full automation? And what would the world war look like? And then meanwhile, while he's going to get that $1 trillion, everybody else is wondering where all the jobs went. Where's the middle class going? They're all pulling back spending because I think they finally see it. And somebody in the audience was, saying, do I not think that the people that watch this show prep? Well, I know you guys do. I know this group of people do. The problem is that we're a small fraction of the population out there, and not everybody's, preparing for the future.
Yeah, very small amount. And again, what I find so interesting with all these changes, okay, this is us. Natural, because you mentioned troops and things, the natural order of the world in the animal kingdom is also being upset tremendously.
Yeah.
Like the amount of, black bears, I consider them just like large rats that come through the rubbish and cause a lot of problems around here. Raccoons are terrible. Black bears are worse. They're way bigger. They can break open almost anything. But there's been so many bear attacks in Japan. And you have to wonder why. Okay, so this is just your average black bear. Like if you saw this standing out there and you're hiking by yourself, unless you know bear techniques, that might not very well work to try to make a lot of noise and scare them away. If it was me and I was carrying a rifle with me and that thing started to attack, I remember with the bear, I always shoot low because the way their snout jumps, you're going to miss. Most times people shoot over them. Just a hint to self: if a bear is coming at you, just from the old timers telling me this, you always shoot low because the way they come in with their snout, it's deceiving. Again, I talked about birds with the different iridescent colors to try to get predators to go in the wrong direction with the glint off a translucent wing edge or something. Same thing. Bears are the way they do it, just deceiving with your eyes. But if I was there and I had the chance and this thing was coming to attack, I would definitely draw on that thing for sure. If you're out in the wild, if you got 2 or 3 people, you should be able to fend that thing off. But what's interesting is they're going to be restricting bear repellent spray, which makes me wonder, why would they do that? That's the thing. Like it's like mace for a bear, basically. But look at this. Japan's had more than 100 bear attacks and 13 people killed across the country. Like what? Look, and there in the dark bold there, sightings have jumped 6-fold, 6x.
They're,
That makes no sense to me. Like what is going on
they're
truly?
hungry.
Well, it's not about them being hungry. Something is changing, I believe, in the magnetic field. Like we're seeing all these magnetic field anomalies along the southern hemisphere to the point where they quit publishing data off swarm. It was too intense where the changes were most. Now they show the new world magnetic model where on the south, that thing has, I wouldn't say doubled in size. I would say a good 60 to 70% larger than it was on the last reading 5 years ago when they updated it. So you have to think about the depleting magnetic field in the southern hemisphere is not quite doubled, but it's, on the next time, if it does that again, we're talking, an eighth of the southern hemisphere is going to be at a magnetic anomaly versus, negative, where the polarity is not there. So you got to wonder, like, how are those people going to behave in the country? Are we seeing more violence in South America? Are we seeing strangeness in South America, in like southern Chile, southern Argentina, those areas? Uruguay, Paraguay, that area down south. Like, how are people behaving in that area? Because if you look at the world magnetic model of the South Atlantic anomaly, it's expanded over those areas. Predominantly, those anomalies were down like in Antarctica, way out in the Atlantic Ocean. There might have been a couple islands where some people lived.
Right.
Okay, you got 100 people maybe skitzing out because the magnetic field's different. Okay. But now it's moving over where tens of millions of people live, hundreds of millions of people. So I'm wondering what the mind would be and what kind of effect that's had on the human psyche, resonance, perception, thought process, emotions, and everything else that could be with the human resonating in a different magnetic field. Like, how has South America changed? Because that's the question. If it does indeed spread from that point globally, then we would get a sort of crystal ball on human behavior, looking at that anomaly first and seeing the uptick in crime, the decrease in crime, the uptick in marriages, the divorce rate increasing, decreasing, the childbirth rate. Oh, people are whatever. There's so many metrics you can get from society based on an increase or a decrease on a noticeable level, like a X sigma, 3 sigma, 5 sigma, 6 sigma event outside their ranges, because that magnetic field's moving right on top of everything over there.
Yeah, it might cause a migration of animals and people, and cause all kinds of effects. I mean, we know there is some portion of effects that happens with magnetic field storms when we get hit by geomagnetic storms. The question is what happens to those people that have no, guard whatsoever? And I would think that you'd start seeing stuff like crops failing and stuff like that eventually. And that's in that major growth area where that moved in. But, I actually have been seeing a lot of articles, not about South America, but about up here, about Central American and some South American animals making a home in North America, moving this way for some reason. And it kind of is counterintuitive if you think it would be getting, super cold up here for some of these jungle animals to be coming up here. Like I brought up when I did it solo one night talking about the jaguar sightings. from California to New Mexico and now down into South Texas. But not only that, they have the South American, Central American version of the raccoon, the coati or coati. I don't know how you say that. Anyway, they're being spotted all over the place up here north of the border as well. And although their range classically did kind of come up a little bit, they're not, like, no one sees them. Like Arizona and New Mexico are not known for those animals, and people are seeing big packs of them looking for food. That's why I thought
Unless it was wetter.
well,
If it was way wetter and there was a lot more forest, there'd be a lot more food and they could exist in that range.
think
But
about
the vegetation's not there to support the forest animals they eat.
Well, I was going to say, think about this. It's hard to see a food chain in its entirety. So if you're having effects with specific animals, behaving or changing places or migrating or even dying off due to radiation that they don't normally deal with, that would cause a chain of events, a domino effect of different animals changing their behaviors to fix what's happening or adapt to the situation, which might cause unseen bad things in the future. And you just see this little domino of animals behaving strangely because something's missing out of the ecosystem now. Something's not behaving right, like whether it was a bug or a worm or a fish. And then, we have the genetic pollution worldwide of all of these different arenas of stuff. And I was kind of going to bring this up. This is a guy that dropped dead, or he didn't drop dead. He had a medical emergency. Excuse me, I misspoke. He had a medical emergency in a pharma meeting in the Oval Office, and I'm just thinking, this is the same guys that brought us this, which is a peer-reviewed paper about direct molecular evidence of mRNA medicines or treatments in our genome. It's integrated. It is with us, and that's the same thing you find with changing diets, changing maybe magnetic fields, where you get things changing as well in the genetic structure of stuff.
And that's the HHS press office,
Yes,
is it
this
not?
is for immediate release,
Health and Human
and
Services. News release, public.
yeah, and it's weird because it's just now hitting kind of the interwebs, but it was actually put out July 11th, 2025. So it's weird that it's just now hitting. Now they're making articles about it. American College of Physics reminds people, hey, watch out about your organs. It's not really their primary duty to keep you alive. And they're telling the medical industry, hey, you can't make your primary objective organ harvesting. But hey, why not? Chinese are doing it. Why not us too? And by the way, we got 3 more Chinese researchers arrested and charged with conspiracy to smuggle biological materials into the USA. So, things are livening up around the world slowly. You just see these little off headlines. We already saw that in California before, where the other ones got arrested. And the idea that now some of these genetic things can be done by anybody. So the same way I was talking about coders and programmers, you also have that same type of person that worked in the genetic industry. And it's not hard for them to figure out in a basement how to make something nasty and put it out, which allows the governments that are out there to always have that as a backup excuse that there was this weird lone wolf, lone nut, like in grandma's basement, like I said before, that did all of this. And they can pretty much do that now that they've convinced everybody of the possibilities that it can happen. The American dream. It's only $5 million.
Oh,
Come on.
let's look at the American dream. I'm going to switch it up so we can see it a little bit better. There we go.
Only $5
No, I want
million.
to get the big display of the ransom. It's such
There we
a
go.
wonderful slide here. Let's go for it. Yeah, bottom's better. We're going to hit it up.
All
All right. So here's the American dream. What's your interest rate for your home mortgage? I mean, that's kind of a big one there. Retirement. Now get this. Estimated minimum savings to retire for 20 years, 1.6 million.
Damn.
I'm just going to say, just an early warning. Anybody who wants to live a normal, lovely life after a certain age, the States is not it. You're going to have to move. And there's so many wonderful destinations out on the planet that you won't even need a fraction of that. They kind of trap you in this thing like you have to retire in America. You have to. If you don't do, you're going to lose your friends network. Well, damn, by the time you're 70, most of your friends are dead or moved away anyway.
Right.
You might keep in touch with some neighbors that you met 3 or 5 years ago that you moved in with. And that's not your friends network that you knew somebody for 50 years from from back in the day. That kind of money? Are you kidding me? 1.6 million just to retire after you worked your whole life? You need that much? Hell, I'm going to go, buy beachfront property or rent beachfront property through a law firm somewhere in Indonesia and surf the rest of my life and chill out watching sunsets for like 1/20th of that.
Well,
Really, with the maid, with private chefs and all that, and I'm at 1/20th of that. You're really talking about?
that kind of reminds me of that movie Looper, where they go back.
Oh, I love that
Right?
movie.
If you remember, they had a conversation in there where the kid was talking about retiring and going somewhere in the US, and he said, "No, no, no, man. Believe me, I've been to the future. China's where you want to go."
Yeah. And Jumper's another cool one too. Like those movies are showing you something where they can and they can like
Yeah.
move through to another space that they can visualize. Boom, just pop into that space,
And
No passport.
there is I've read them on here many times, articles about people having to move to Mexico City or other places so that their retirement money actually goes somewhere. And they know it's
No,
not
wait,
here.
owning a car kills me though. $1 million to own a car by refinancing. See, here's the trap they
What?
got you in. You got to buy a new car every 10 years.
No.
Well, they're made to break down now. Back in the day, I had this 76 Jeep Cherokee, coolest car, man. We could fix that thing to, like just a regular socket set, and you could fix nearly everything on that beast,
Right.
Like it's the first time I ever learned how to turn wrenches and work on any motor at all was that thing. Kept breaking down. I always had it, but it was such the simple parts. Like there was some timing why, there was like the space between, the
Yeah.
uh, pistons and thing was a little bit different. You could adjust all that with a slider and get it like twisted. You could do everything by yourself. But now, like these new cars, they break down after 10 years. You can't. It's going to cost you more to get the replacement and the repairs than it does to buy a new car. It's
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But $1 million, that's insane, $900,000 to own a car through your lifetime here.
Well,
Damn, it's not, this has gotten out of control. This is way
think
out.
about if you got a 60s or 70s hot rod and it has good paint and all of the original everything, you could probably sell it for $1 million right now. But think about this. If you're really going to think about the long term on cars, you're either going to have to have something American pre-1980 or Japanese pre-2000 or post-2005. Almost all the stuff in between those years is junk. You got the whole K car line from the 80s. The 90s cars were garbage. They didn't really start trying to reintroduce good cars again until the 2000s. And even then, they moved over all the American cars and everything to the parts, like you said, are so expensive and everything's ran off of electronics that not the everyday average person can figure out. And that's why I said American pre-1980. If you got something that's in really good condition from then, that's the thing. And the parts have gone up, but they're still lower than these electronic parts and parts that are made to be, all together. And I go with Japanese myself, Hondas, because anything that's an Acura or a Honda has interchangeable parts from different cars, different year models, and it's easy to work on, and everything's adjustable. So like you might buy an American car and it has a cast part that holds the wiring harness, and then or a cast part that holds the air conditioner or the power steering, and it doesn't adjust. You have to have the belt that goes with that car or it will not work. It's hard to move it around. But if you have a Honda, you can twist a couple nuts and move that stuff around and adjust it. You can take out the air conditioner and roll without it. You could move around stuff. And not only that, you can use belts that come off of 1970s model American cars. Weirdly, some of the belts are the same. It's just weird thing.
Yeah, good advice here. Hell, let me
Having more of
stop
the same
sharing
car
here.
too. Having more of the same model of car is in your best interest. Like I've tried to do that with every product, really. So whatever it is, if you find out it works good, you need like 4 of them.
See, this is why you want to tune in every single week to the Civilization Cycle podcast, live radio show. Info like this is worth the entire conversation listening to us. So thank you for joining tonight. Remember, civilizationcycle.com. Jump in there. We'll give you the show notes every week. 10 different bullet points that we talked about tonight. And that is for sure going to be number 1 right there, the intertwining, and look for those automobiles where belts and parts and can be swappable between different lineages of autos, because that's going to be an important thing. Just as, taking metals out of buildings, the persons who understand how to deconstruct a building and separate the metals out, that's going to be a new trade. That's going to be a winner. That's 2 bullet points right there out of the newsletter. So, coming through next year, and I'll add, 7, 8 more different ones on top. So those will be right there on the list. So if you want to get that, buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle, and also the civilizationcycle.com website for the show notes. Just slide right down below the player for our newest episode. Anyway, thank you for joining tonight, Ransom. Thank you for giving me your mind to jump through some ideas again, and we'll see you next week. Sign us out, Ransom.